Hey, my name is Noah Reed. I'm 26, and for the last 2 years, I've been the personal assistant to Claire Monroe's CEO of Monroe Strategic Advisors, a consulting firm headquartered in downtown Boston. The job pays the rent on a one-bedroom walk-up in the North End, keeps my student loans from swallowing me whole, and gives me a front-row seat to a woman most people only read about in Forbes. Claire is 40 sharp as a blade, and famous for three things: never being late, never wasting a word, and never smiling unless the numbers on a slide deck demand it. To the world, she's the ice queen in tailored suits. To me, she's the voice on the other end of the intercom: Noah the draft. Noah reschedule Tokyo. Noah cut the meeting at 3. I nod, I type, I book the private jet. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. I never expected the deal to change. It started with a trip to Santa Barbara, a 3-day leadership offsite for a Fortune 100 client. Claire ran the room like a conductor: every pause, every slide, transition, every raised eyebrow perfectly timed. By Friday afternoon, the contract was signed, the client was grinning, and Claire did something I'd never seen. She dismissed the team early and told me I had Saturday off. Go see the ocean, Noah. You look like you need it. I laughed because the idea of Claire Monroe noticing whether I needed anything was absurd, but I took the day. Saturday morning, I walked down to the public beach just past the harbor. The air smelled of salt and sunscreen, the sand still cool under my sneakers. I left my phone in the hotel, kicked off my shoes, and headed toward the water. The crowd thinned the farther I walked until I reached a stretch of beach tucked behind a cluster of palms and low dunes. Quiet, private, perfect. That's when I saw her. She was maybe 50 yards ahead, half hidden by the curve of the shore. At first, I only registered the shape: a woman sitting on a faded blue towel, knees drawn up, arms wrapped loosely around them. The sun caught the edges of her hair, dark blonde, loose, moving with the breeze. A wide-brimmed straw hat lay beside her. She wore a black bikini and a thin white cover-up that fluttered like a sail. Something about the way she stared at the horizon made me slow my steps. Then she turned her head and the world tilted. Claire. Not the Claire who could silence a boardroom with a glance. This Claire had no makeup, no armor, no schedule. Just sun-kissed skin, oversized sunglasses, and an expression I couldn't read. She saw me at the same moment. Her shoulders stiffened. The sunglasses came off. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, small and sheepish, almost embarrassed, and lifted one hand in a half wave. I walked over because standing there gaping felt ruder than interrupting whatever this was. My pulse thudded in my ears louder than the waves. "Mr. Reed," she said, voice low, amused. "My eyes are up here." Heat flooded my face. I hadn't realized I'd been staring at the line of her collarbone where the cover-up had slipped. I jerked my gaze to her face. Sorry, I didn't expect you." "Neither did I." She pushed the sunglasses into her hair like a headband. "I come here when I need to remember I'm not a PowerPoint slide." I laughed before I could stop myself. The sound felt foreign between us. She tilted her head, studying me the way she studied balance sheets, curious, analytical, but not unkind. "You're off the clock," she said. "Sit if you want. Or keep walking. I won't put it in your performance review." I sat. The sand was warm through my jeans. For a minute, we just listened to the ocean. Then she spoke again, softer. "I used to swim competitively. College. Before spreadsheets." I glanced at her. "You don't strike me as the type to lose." I didn't. A pause, but I stopped enjoying it. Same reason I stopped doing a lot of things. I didn't know what to say to that. Claire Monroe didn't share. She delegated. She decided. She disappeared into conference calls and red-eye flights. Yet here she was, tracing idle patterns in the sand, with one finger talking like the rules didn't apply. I cleared my throat. "For what it's worth, you look different out here." She raised an eyebrow. "Different good or different fired, different human?" Her mouth curved, not the tight professional smile I knew, but something real. She leaned back on her palms, face tilted to the sun. "Careful, Noah." That almost sounded like a compliment. It was. She turned then, and the light caught her eyes storm gray with flecks of green I'd never noticed under fluorescent office lights. They were startling. Beautiful. I said it before my brain caught up. Your eyes, I said. They're incredible. The words hung between us like gulls above the water. Claire blinked. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked flustered. Then she laughed, quiet, surprised, genuine. Well, she said, pushing to her feet and brushing sand from her legs. That's a new one. I stood too suddenly aware of how close we were. The breeze pressed her cover up against her body. The scent of coconut sunscreen drifted between us. She slipped the sunglasses back on, but not before I saw something shift behind them. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. I'm going to walk, she said. You're welcome to join me. Or not. No agenda. I fell into step beside her. Our shadows stretched long across the wet sand. Neither of us spoke for a while. The tide erased our footprints almost as fast as we made them. Somewhere between the dunes and the pier, the invisible line that had always separated boss and assistant began to blur. I didn't know it yet, but the ocean had already started pulling us in the same direction. We walked north along the shoreline, past families building lopsided sandcastles and couples tangled under striped umbrellas. The sun climbed higher, turning the water into hammered silver. Claire kept an easy pace, barefootedly barefoot, the hem of her cover-up brushing her thighs. I stayed half a step behind, sneakers dangling from my fingers, trying to match her stride without crowding her. Every so often, the waves rushed in and licked our ankles cold enough to make me flinch. She didn't. She just kept walking, eyes on the horizon, like the ocean owed her answers. After 10 minutes, she spoke without turning. You're quiet today, trying to decide if this is a dream or a performance review in disguise. That earned another laugh, short surprise, like she hadn't meant to let it out. Relax, Noah. I left the clipboard in the room. We reached a stretch where the beach narrowed, hemmed by rocks, slick with seaweed. She stopped, shaded her eyes, and pointed. There's a cove just past those boulders. Locals only. Tourists never find it. She glanced at me. Coming, I followed. The rocks were sharp underfoot. I hopped from one to the next while she moved with the certainty of someone who'd done this 100 times. When we rounded the last outcrop, the cove opened up, small, crescent-shaped, framed by cliffs, the color of burnt honey. No footprints, but ours. The water was clearer here, turquoise fading to deep indigo. A single gull circled overhead, crying like a rusty hinge. Claire dropped her hat on a flat rock and waded in without hesitation. The water rose to her waist, then her ribs. She dove under a wave and surfaced slick-haired, pushing water from her face. Come on, she called. It's warmer than it looks. I hesitated on the shore. The last time I'd swum in the ocean, I was 12 on a church trip to Cape Cod. Claire treaded water watching me, afraid of sharks, afraid of looking like an idiot. Too late for that. She grinned wide, unguarded, the kind of smile that belonged on someone half her age. I pulled my t-shirt over my head and waded in. The shock of cold stole my breath. Claire laughed again and splashed me. I splashed back. Within minutes, we were kids, ducking waves, racing to a buoy 20 yards out, collapsing breathless on the sand when the current pushed us back. Salt stung my eyes, my skin prickled with sun and adrenaline. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed this hard. Eventually, we floated on our backs, the sky a perfect cloudless blue. The only sounds were water lapping and our breathing. So, I said, eyes closed against the glare. Does the Ice Queen secretly compete in open water swims? Only when no one's watching. A pause. And only when I need to remember I'm still alive. I turned my head. She was staring up, expression unreadable. Water beaded on her lashes. You don't seem dead to me. That's the problem, she said softly. Most days I feel like I'm sleepwalking through my own life. The confession hung between us, fragile as sea foam. I didn't know what to do with it, so I didn't answer. After a moment, she rolled onto her stomach and swam toward shore. I followed. We lay on our towels, drying in the sun. The cove felt like a secret the ocean had whispered just to us. Claire propped herself on one elbow, tracing idle circles in the sand. Tell me something you've never told anyone at the office. I thought about it. I keep a notebook in my desk drawer. half-finished stories, bad ones mostly. Her fingers stilled. Why bad? Because I never finish them. I get scared they'll suck, so I stop. She nodded slowly. I get that. I used to write too. Before boardrooms, before the divorce. I turned to look at her. What happened? Marriage happened. Ambition happened. He wanted a wife who came home at 5. I wanted to build something that mattered. We both lost. She shrugged, but the motion was tight. He kept the dog. I kept the company. The sun warmed my skin, the sand stuck to my calves. I wanted to ask more, but the weight in her voice stopped me. Instead, I said, I'm sorry. Don't be. I chose it. She sat up, brushing sand from her arms. Come on, I'm starving. We found a shack a mile down the beach, peeling blue paint picnic tables under a torn canvas awning. The menu was handwritten on a chalkboard: fish tacos, ceviche, cold beer. We ordered at the counter, carried our trays to a table overlooking the water. Claire peeled the label off her bottle, methodical. I watched her fingers, long, capable, the nails unpolished for once. Between bites, she asked, Why'd you take the job with me? Needed the money. Thought it'd look good on a resume. And now I chewed, stalling. Now I'm not sure what I'm doing. She smiled small. Good. Means you're paying attention. We ate in companionable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. When the plates were empty, she leaned back, eyes half closed against the sun. I haven't had a day like this since… God, I can't remember. Me neither. She turned her head, studying me. You're easy to be around, Noah. That's rare. Heat crawled up my neck again. I focused on the horizon. You're not what I expected. Likewise. The afternoon slipped away. We walked back as the light turned gold shadows stretching long across the sand. Claire's cover-up fluttered. My t-shirt clung damp to my back. At the path leading to the hotel, she stopped. I should head up, she said. Early flight tomorrow. I nodded, throat suddenly dry. Right. Of course. She hesitated, then reached out and brushed a grain of sand from my shoulder. The touch was light, deliberate. Thank you for today. Anytime. She started to turn, then paused. Noah. Yeah. Her eyes met mine, steady, unguarded. I meant what I said earlier. About feeling alive. Then she walked away barefoot, the setting sun catching the edges of her hair like fire. I stood there long after she disappeared, the taste of salt and possibility thick on my tongue. Back in Boston, the city hit like a slap of cold air. Logan Airport at 6:30 on a Sunday, fluorescent lights, humming, the smell of burnt coffee and jet fuel. Claire was already in boss mode before we reached baggage claim. Phone to her ear heels, clicking, voice clipped. Tell legal, the clause stays. I want the revised deck by 9. I trailed behind with both suitcases, the weekend in Santa Barbara shrinking to a postcard memory. By the time we slid into the back of the Blacktown car, the invisible wall was fully rebuilt. She stared out the tinted window. I pretended to answer emails that didn't exist. Monday blurred into the usual rhythm. 7:00 a.m., stand up in the glass-walled war room. Claire, in charcoal silk hair, twisted into a knot sharp enough to cut glass. I handed her the espresso, 2 sugars, no milk, and she nodded without looking up. Flight confirmations for Zurich. And push the analyst call to 4. Same script, different day. Except now, every time she said my name, the memory of her laugh on the beach flickered behind my eyes like a glitch. The first crack showed on Wednesday. I was in the copy room wrestling with a jammed printer when she appeared in the doorway, arms folded. Walk with me. No please, no explanation. We took the elevator to the roof deck, empty, wind whipping off the harbor. She leaned against the railing, city sprawling below us in steel and brick. You've been quiet, she said, trying to keep up. She turned, eyes narrowed. That's not it. I exhaled. Santa Barbara feels like it happened to someone else. A beat. Then me too. She pulled a folded sheet from her blazer pocket, hotel notepaper, the kind with the little palm tree logo. I wrote this on the plane. Thought about throwing it away. Didn't. She handed it over. It was a single paragraph, handwritten in her precise slant. I used to think control was the same as safety. Turns out it's just another kind of drowning. I looked up. You okay? No. The word came out small. I keep replaying the cove. The tacos. The way you looked at me like I wasn't a liability. She tucked hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I'd never seen. I don't know what to do with that. I folded the note carefully. You don't have to do anything with it. She gave a short, humorless laugh. That's the problem. I always do something. The rooftop door hissed shut behind an intern carrying coffee. Claire straightened instantly, CEO mask sliding into place. But before she walked away, she said so quietly I almost missed it. Thank you for not treating me like glass. That night, I stayed late to finish a pitch deck. The office emptied floor by floor until only the emergency lights glowed. I was saving the final file when the elevator dinged. Claire stepped out carrying 2 takeout bags from the Thai place on State Street. She set one on my desk without ceremony. Pad ki mao, extra basil. You skipped lunch. I stared. How did you... I noticed things. She pulled the second chair around, sat and opened her own container. Steam curled between us. We ate in silence, at first chopsticks clicking. Then she said I started writing again. The novel I abandoned in 2017, 3 pages last night. That's huge. It's garbage. She speared a shrimp. But it's mine. I told her about the story I'd been poking at for months, a guy who fixes things for everyone else but can't fix himself. She listened, head tilted, fork paused midair. When I finished, she said, write the next chapter. Tonight. I'll read it. Seriously, deadline's midnight. She stood smoothing her skirt, and Noah, yeah. Her voice dropped. I think about Santa Barbara more than I should. She left before I could answer. I opened a blank document and wrote until the words blurred. At 11:57, I emailed her the file. Subject line Chapter 2. Don't laugh. Her reply came at 12:03. Not laughing. Crying a little. In a good way. Bring coffee tomorrow. We'll talk. The next morning, I found a sticky note on my monitor, conference room B. 7:15. No signature, but the handwriting was hers. Inside the blinds were half-drawn city lights still flickering beyond the glass. Claire stood at the window, sleeves rolled, hair loose for once. She turned when I entered. Close the door. I did. The click echoed. She held up a printed copy of my chapter, edges curled from being read too many times. This character, the one who's afraid to finish, he's you. Parts of him. She stepped closer. Finish the story, Noah. Not for me. For you. Then softer, I'm tired of unfinished things. I swallowed. What are we doing, Claire? I don't know. Her fingers brushed the sleeve of my shirt, tentative. But I know I don't want to stop. The space between us shrank to inches. I could smell her shampoo, something citrus and clean. Her eyes searched mine, the same storm gray from the beach, but now unguarded. I leaned in. She met me halfway. The kiss was slow, careful, like we were both afraid the moment would shatter. It didn't. Her hand found the back of my neck, mine settled at her waist. When we pulled apart, foreheads still touching, she whispered, "This is insane." Probably. We could ruin everything. Or not. She laughed, breathless, real. You're braver than I gave you credit for. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. We sprang apart as the cleaning crew rolled past. Claire smoothed her blouse, suddenly all business again, but her eyes stayed soft. We need rules. Rule 1, no one finds out. Not yet. She nodded. Rule 2, we don't lie to each other. Ever. Deal. Over the next weeks, the rules bent but didn't break. Late-night emails disguised as work. A shared Uber after a client dinner, her hand slipping into mine in the dark back seat. Once in the supply closet, hunting for printer cartridges, she kissed me hard against the shelves, then straightened my tie and walked out like nothing happened. I lived on adrenaline and stolen minutes. Then the rumors started. It was small at first, a raised eyebrow in the elevator, a whispered personal assistant with air quotes. Claire heard them too. I saw it in the way her jaw tightened during meetings, the way she stopped lingering after hours. One Thursday, she called me into her office and closed the door. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Okay, she didn't sit. Paced instead, heels silent on the carpet. Legal flagged an anonymous email. Someone saw us leave the building together last week. They're calling it a conflict of interest. Who doesn't matter? She stopped to face me. I can shut it down. One word from me and it disappears, but She rubbed her temple. I don't want to keep hiding, and I don't want you caught in the crossfire. I stepped closer. I'm already in it. I know. Her voice cracked just slightly. But if this blows up, it's my reputation on the line, not yours. You're 26. You have options. I don't want options. I want this. I gestured between us. Whatever this is. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, give me the weekend. I need to think. I nodded, throat tight. Take all the time you need. Friday night, I sat in my apartment with a beer I didn't taste, staring at the chapter I couldn't finish. My phone buzzed at 11:47. Claire, open your door. She stood in the hallway in jeans and a hoodie, hair damp from the rain, no makeup, eyes red. Before I could speak, she said, I can't do this halfway. I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of pretending that day on the beach didn't happen. I pulled her inside. She kissed me like the world was ending, hands fisted in my shirt, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. When we broke apart, she whispered, I'm falling, Noah. And I don't know how to land. I held her face. Then we fall together. Outside, thunder rolled over the harbor. Inside, the rules shattered one by one. The fallout came faster than either of us expected. Monday morning, an email from HR landed in both our inboxes. Mandatory meeting 9:00 a.m. conference room 4. No subject line, no pleasantries. Claire's face went pale when she forwarded it to me. They know, she said. Just 2 words, but they carried the weight of a guillotine. We walked into the room separately, she first, me 10 minutes later, clutching a folder like a shield. The executive team was already seated. Legal 2 board members, the CHRO with her trademark red lipstick and zero humor. Claire took the head of the table. I stood near the door because no one told me to sit. The CHRO slid a printed screenshot across the glass. A grainy photo from a parking garage security cam, Claire and me in the back of the Uber, her hand in mine, my lips brushing her temple. Timestamp 11:42 p.m., 2 weeks ago. Below it, an anonymous message, conflict of interest, nepotism. Unprofessional conduct. Claire didn't flinch. Who sent this? Doesn't matter, the board chair said. Perception does. Stock dipped 2 points this morning. Clients are asking questions. I opened my mouth. Claire's glance shut it. She addressed the room like she was pitching a merger. Noah's performance reviews are exemplary. Our personal relationship began outside work hours and has never compromised deliverables. If the board wants a policy change, draft it. Until then, this is a private matter. Legal cleared his throat. The policy already exists. Fraternization between direct reports is grounds for reassignment or termination. Claire's eyes flicked to me, panic quickly masked. Then reassign me. I'll step back from day to day. Noah keeps his role. The CHRO shook her head. That's not how optics work, Claire. You're the face of the firm. Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. I felt every stare. My pulse hammered so loud I was sure they heard it. Finally, I spoke. I'll resign. Effective immediately. Claire's head whipped toward me. Noah, it's the cleanest fix. I met the board's eyes one by one. I'm replaceable. She isn't. The CHRO started to protest, but Claire cut her off. Give us the room. They filed out. The door clicked shut. Claire stood palms flat on the table, knuckles white. You don't get to fall on your sword for me? I'm choosing. My voice shook but held. I can write anywhere. You built this place. She crossed the room in 3 strides, gripped my sleeves. I don't want you gone. I want, her voice cracked. I want us, but not like this, not with you sacrificed. I cupped her face. Then let me go. Temporarily. We figure out the rest outside these walls. She searched my eyes, tears threatening but not falling. You'd do that? I already typed the letter. I pulled the folded sheet from my pocket, placed it on the table. To whom it may concern? She stared at it like it was a death sentence. Then she picked it up, tore it in half, quarters, eighths, let the pieces flutter into the trash. No. Claire, no. She grabbed my hand, laced our fingers. We do this together or not at all. That afternoon, she called an emergency all hands. I stood in the back, heart in my throat. Claire took the podium in the atrium, heels echoing on marble. Effective today, she said, voice steady, I am taking a 90-day sabbatical to restructure leadership transition. Noah Reed is no longer my assistant. He is now co-founder of Monroe Creative, a new division focused on narrative strategy and thought leadership. Our relationship is personal. It is consensual. It will not impact operations. Questions can be directed to legal. The room erupted, gasps, murmurs, a few stunned claps. Cameras flashed. Claire didn't blink. When it quieted, she added, I've spent 15 years proving I'm the best at what I do. I'm done proving I don't have a life. She stepped down, walked straight to me, took my hand in front of 300 employees and led me out the lobby doors into the October sunlight. Reporters shouted. We ignored them. In the elevator to the garage, she finally exhaled. You just blew up your career, I said. Our career, she corrected. We rebuild it together. That night, she showed up at my apartment with a bottle of Barolo and a duffel bag. I sublet my place, she said. Figured we'd need a bigger table for 2 laptops. I laughed, shaky, disbelieving. You're insane. Certified. She dropped the bag, kissed me hard against the door. But I'm done hiding. The next weeks were chaos and clarity. Monroe Creative launched from a co-working space in the Seaport. Claire wrote her novel in coffee shop corners. I edited, pitched, learned to invoice. The press called it a scandal. Clients called it brave. Stock stabilized. Some board members resigned in protest. Others sent congratulations. We set new rules this time on our terms. No secrets, no shame. Therapy once a week, separate then joint. Claire learned to delegate. I learned to finish chapters. We fought over closet space and whose turn it was to buy oat milk. We made up on the fire escape city lights flickering below. One night in November, snow dusting the harbor, she handed me a flash drive. First draft, she said, your turn to tear it apart. I read until dawn. When I looked up, she was asleep on the couch, manuscript pages scattered like snow. I carried her to bed, pulled the blanket over us both. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, for the first time, we were still. The board offered her the CEO chair again on the condition we formalized the new division. She counter-offered co-CEO shared title equal equity. They accepted. We signed the papers in December, snow tapping the windows like applause. On New Year's Eve, we stood on the apartment balcony, champagne fizzing, untouched. Claire leaned into me, breath warm against my neck. Still think my eyes are incredible, she asked. I turned her to face me. They're the first thing I see every morning, and the last thing I want to see every night. She smiled open, unafraid. Then let's keep looking. Somewhere below, fireworks cracked open the sky. We didn't watch. We had our own light. The first morning in the new apartment smelled of burnt toast and possibility. Claire had insisted on cooking something about reclaiming domesticity, and the smoke alarm shrieked like a jealous ex. I stumbled from the bedroom in boxers, waving a dish towel at the ceiling, while she laughed barefoot in my old Harvard t-shirt hair, a wild halo. The harbor glinted beyond the window's gulls, wheeling over fishing boats. We opened every window, let the January wind chase out the smoke, and ate the charred slices anyway, standing at the counter, shoulders touching. Welcome home, she said, bumping her hip against mine. Home. The word still felt borrowed, like a coat I hadn't earned. But the key on the hook by the door had both our names etched beneath the brass. Monroe Creative took the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Seaport. Exposed brick floor-to-ceiling whiteboards, a single long table we christened with coffee rings and red pen wars. Claire wrote in the morning's novel pages, stacking like bricks, while I built pitch decks and cold-emailed editors who'd ignored me for years. By March, we had 3 clients, a part-time designer, and a cactus. Claire named Gerald, who refused to die despite her black thumb. Weekends belonged to us. No schedules, no suits. We grocery shopped at the Haymarket on Saturdays, arguing over ripe avocados and whether truffle oil was a scam. Sundays, we walked the harbor path, her hand in the back pocket of my jeans, my camera slung over her shoulder. She'd stop to photograph rust on a bollard or the way light fractured through a cracked bottle. I'd steal shots of her wind, whipping her hair eyes, squinting against the sun, laughing at something I said that probably wasn't funny. One April evening, we spread a blanket on the roof deck, city lights flickering below like a circuit board. Claire leaned back on her elbows, wine glass balanced on her stomach. I finished the book, she said. I nearly dropped my beer. The whole thing. 312 pages of questionable life choices. She grinned. Your turn to read. I took the manuscript home that night, read it in one sitting on the fire escape city, humming beneath me. It was raw funny. Brutal, our story, wearing different clothes. When I finished, Dawn was smudging the sky pink. I found her asleep on the couch, laptop glowing on her chest. I carried her to bed, whispered against her temple, it's perfect. She stirred. Liar. Publishable liar. 2 weeks later, an agent called. Then another. By June. The Architecture of Want had a pre-order link and a cover that made Claire cry in the bookstore when she saw it on the forthcoming table. I framed the mock-up and hung it above our desk. She pretended to hate it. Gerald the cactus got a tiny party hat. Summer brought heat and deadlines. We hired a junior copywriter who idolized Claire and a grizzled ex-journalist who called me kid until I landed us a feature in Fast Company. Claire's sabbatical ended. The board begged her back as co-CEO. She negotiated remote Tuesdays and no travel without me. They agreed. Power, it turned out, looked different when you stopped apologizing for wanting a life. In August, we drove to Santa Barbara in a rented convertible, top down, her hand on my thigh the whole way. We stayed in the same hotel, requested the same room. The beach hadn't changed, same dunes, same smell of kelp and sunscreen. Claire wore the black bikini from 2 years ago, faded, now the elastic soft from too many washes. I wore the same white T-holes under the arms, the one she'd stolen and returned a dozen times. We walked to the cove at dusk. The tide had carved new channels in the sand. Our old footprints were long gone. Claire kicked off her sandals, waded into her knees. I followed. The water was shock cold, then perfect. She turned to me, salt beating on her lashes. You still think my eyes are incredible? I stepped closer, water swirling around our calves. They changed my life. She smiled, slow, certain, and rested her forehead against mine. The sun dipped, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. Somewhere behind us, a child laughed. A dog barked. Life kept moving. We stayed until the stars came out, 2 silhouettes against the endless roll of the Pacific. Later, back in the room, we left the curtains open so the moon could watch. Claire traced the scar on my shoulder, an old biking accident I'd never told her about, and asked for the story. I told her. She told me about the C-section scar she hid under high-waisted suits, the baby she'd lost before the divorce. We traded pieces of ourselves like currency, building something sturdier than any contract. Fall turned to winter again. The book launched to quiet acclaim bookstore readings, a podcast tour, Claire blushing when the host called her the voice of a generation. I stood in the back, proud and useless, clapping louder than anyone. Monroe Creative doubled in size. We moved Gerald to a bigger pot. Claire learned to make pancakes without setting off the alarm. I finished my own novel about a man who fixes things for everyone else and finally learns to fix himself. She read the last page on the fire escape at 3 a.m., tears tracking clean lines through the city grime on her cheeks. Publish it, she said. Only if you blurb it. Done. On the 2nd anniversary of the beach, we returned to Santa Barbara. Same convertible, same playlist, Springsteen and old R&B. We brought a blanket, a bottle of the Barolo we'd shared the night she moved in, and a small velvet box I'd carried for 3 months. The cove was empty, moonlight silvering the water. Claire spread the blanket, sat cross-legged, and patted the space beside her. I knelt instead. Noah, I opened the box. Inside, a simple platinum band etched with tiny waves. I'm not great at speeches, I started, voice cracking. But 2 years ago, you let me see the real you. And every day since, you've let me keep seeing her. I don't want to stop. Marry me, Claire, not the CEO, not the author. Just you. She stared at the ring, then at me, eyes shining. You're sure more than I've ever been about anything. She launched herself at me, blanket tangling wine, spilling laughter and tears mixing with salt air. Yes, she whispered against my mouth. Yes, yes, yes. We didn't make it back to the hotel until dawn. The wedding was small, 20 people on the harbor pier at sunrise. Claire wore a simple ivory dress that caught the wind. I wore the same white tee under a linen blazer, holes and all. Gerald served as ring bearer in a tiny wagon. We wrote our own vows on index cards the night before, hands shaking from nerves and too much coffee. Claire went first. I promised to keep writing the hard chapters, to share the quiet mornings, and to never let the ocean feel farther than our fire escape. I choked up. I promised to finish every story ours most of all, and to keep choosing you every single day no matter what the board says. We kissed while the sun rose over the water gulls, our only witnesses. Later at the brunch table, Claire raised her glass. To second drafts, she said. Everyone cheered. Life kept writing itself. Monroe Creative became a name clients fought to work with. Claire's second novel hit the bestseller list. Mine debuted to decent reviews and one very proud wife. We bought the apartment, painted the bedroom, the exact blue of Santa Barbara water, hung the framed mock-up of her first cover above the bed. Gerald finally bloomed tiny white flowers that smelled like hope. Some nights we still argue over whose turn it is to buy oat milk. Some mornings the alarm still screams because Claire insists on perfecting her pancake recipe. But every evening without fail we end up on the fire escape, her head on my shoulder, my fingers in her hair, the city humming below like a heartbeat. Love we learned isn't fireworks. It's the quiet click of the door when you come home. It's the way she knows I take 2 sugars without asking. It's the scar stories and the unfinished chapters and the choice every single day to keep turning the page together. And if you ask me what changed everything, I'll tell you the truth. It was the ocean. It was the laugh. It was the moment she let me see her eyes, really see them, and decided to let me stay.